Hello everyone, welcome back to the Programming Fields. I'm Umesh Rana, and in the last episode, we learned what testing is, the different types of test, and we wrote our very first unit test and feature test using Pest framework in Laravel 12. So this is going to be episode 2, in which we are taking it to the next level with something every app needs, which is authentication testing. We will cover login, register, dashboard access and logout functionality. So let's get started. But if you are new to this channel, make sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon so you don't miss any of our step-by-step Laravel tutorials. Now let's jump to the authentication testing. But why authentication testing? Because authentication is the gatekeeper of any application. If it is broken, nothing else matters. And by testing it, we make sure guest user cannot access private pages. Registration actually creates a new user. Login works with correct credentials and fails with wrong ones. And logouts log the user out properly. So let's set it up. And for handling the authentication system, I will be using Laravel Breeze package. So this is up to you. Either you can go with any of the Laravel 12 starter kits, which is Livewire, Vue.js, or React, but I'm going to move step by step in this entire episode. So initially, I want to make it difficult, and that's why I will start with the very first step with Laravel Breeze authentication. So I have already a Laravel 12 application setup that I already did in the last video. Hence, as of now, I will just install Laravel Breeze. So I'm on the official website of Laravel, and here we have this starter kits of Laravel Breeze. So I will scroll down, and here we have this installation command. I will copy this command and I will navigate to the terminal, and here I am inside this project folder. I will paste that command and I will install the Laravel Breeze. So this is installing. Now next we have to execute this Breeze install command so that this will install this auth scaffolding. So let's paste it and let's hit enter. Now this prompted, which Breeze stack would you like to install? Because Laravel Breeze comes with different stack, which is Blade with Alpine, Livewire, React with Inertia, Vue and API only. As of now, I will be going with the minimal setup for creating test for authentication functionalities. So simply I will select Blade with Alpine. And regarding this dark mode, I will skip this because this is not needed. And for the testing framework, this is again asking which testing framework do you prefer. I will go with this default Pest, okay? And this is installing Breeze with scaffolding and Pest. So let's wait for a moment. The Breeze scaffolding has been added alongside the Pest. Now in the next step, we will have to install node modules. So I will type npm install command. Now after installing the node modules, let's run composer run dev command. Okay. Now we will be able to access this application in the browser. So I will navigate to the browser and I will run the application on the localhost 8000 port. Here we have this login and register option added by Laravel Breeze authentication scaffolding. If we'll click on login, we are able to access this login page. Further, we have this register. The registration page is accessible. From here, we can create a new user. So let's register a very first user from here. I will create one user. Okay. And after submitting it, I have redirected on the dashboard page after successful authentication. Here in the profile option, we have the option as profile and logout. If I'll click on profile, yeah, we are able to access this profile page. Further, we have this logout option. If we'll click on this logout, this has redirected on the login page back. So we are able to access all the authentication flow like creating a user, login, profile access and logout functionality using this user interface. Now for the same flow, we have to create test cases. But if we'll check out the project in the code editor, Here we have this tests folder available. Inside this we have two folders as feature and unit. So we already discussed about these all things in the last video. Firstly, if we'll expand this feature folder, here we have another folder as auth. Inside this, we have the following test cases provided by Laravel Breeze. If we'll check any of the file like authentication test, inside this we have this test cases written for authentication, that means login flow. So Laravel Breeze or any of the starter kit creates authentication test cases by default. But in this episode, I want to write this step by step entire things. So what I'll do, I will just delete these two folders like features and unit. So I don't have any test cases written for authentication flow because we will be writing this from very scratch. Now if we'll navigate to the terminal and I will duplicate this terminal tab. Now before moving ahead, I will try to run phpunit test command because this is the command to execute all the test cases available in the project. Here we already deleted all those folders, so we don't have any test cases available, and this said directory unit not found. So we will have to create some files for writing the test cases according to the authentication flow. So if we'll check out to the browser again, for the authentication flow, let's start with this registration. So in the registration, when I clicked on the register option, I'm able to redirect on this registration page. So this is our very first scenario for this register. So in the test cases, we have to write the scenarios. Okay. Now one more thing, inside the registration, we have a form having these fields and also we have this register button. So by clicking on this register button, the user will be able to register. So this is going to be our second scenario. So basically we have to write every scenarios as a test cases inside the test file. So let's create a very first test file for this registration. So let's navigate to the terminal and here I will type a command as phpunit make :test. Let's hit enter and this asked what should the test be named. So I want to create a test for user registration in which I will handle two functionalities. One will be for accessing the registration page and another will be for registering a new user. So I will be giving a name like user registration test, but I want to keep this in a separate folder like auth because this is going to be related to auth functionalities only. So I will give a folder name like auth and / then further I will provide the file name. So I will give name like user registration test. I will hit enter and next it prompted which type of test would you like to create. So this is going to be a feature test because we are going to test entire functionalities for accessing the registration page and creating a new user. So this will come under the feature test. Regarding the feature test and unit test, we already discussed in the last video. So if you have any confusion, you can check out that playlist. As of now, let's go ahead with the feature test. So this has created the feature test inside auth folder. And I will check out the project folder. Inside the tests, we have feature and here we have auth folder and there we have this user registration test.php. Now inside this test file, we have default test case written as test example in which we have one anonymous function and there we are checking one get route that is indicating to home route, and if it exists, this will assert a status as 200. So if we'll navigate to the browser in order to check if that test case is executing, we will have to type phpunit test command. And by default, again this thrown error as unit directory is not found. So let's navigate to the phpunit.xml file and this time I will just comment this unit test suite so that while executing the test cases, it won't look for unit test. Only this will execute the feature test. So if we'll recheck this, Yes, we have one test passed, which is user registration test, and inside that we have example test case. Now let's write the exact test case as per our scenario for accessing this registration page. So for accessing the registration page, we have the route as /register. And if you want to verify the route, we have to check out to this routes folder. There we have auth.php route, which is created by Laravel Breeze package. Inside this, we have all the available routes for handling the authentication. So related to register route, we have these two routes available. One is for accessing the view for that blade file, and another is for post route, which is for creating a new user. So inside this first route, we have registered user controller, in which we have one method as create. So if we'll check out to this registered user controller, here we have this create method, in which this is returning one view as auth.register. So we have to write the test case for accessing this register page whenever we will access /register route. Okay. So let's navigate to this user registration test again. And here we will have to write the test case to access this registration page. Now, if you are completely beginner in terms of writing a test cases, or if you are not familiar with phpunit or Pest, let me navigate to the browser. And here I will navigate to this phpunit official documentation. Inside this, we have the writing tests for phpunit. Because Laravel Pest is built upon phpunit, so every syntax which is written inside phpunit will be working in Pest also. But Pest reduced the boilerplate of phpunit, and that made simplified all the syntax available. So we are going to follow the Pest. Okay. So here I will access this official documentation of Pest as well. Now inside this, after doing the setup and installation, we have this writing tests. Inside this, here we have this folder structure of Pest. So when you install Pest, this creates test folder. Inside that, you will have this unit test and feature test, which will contain the test file respectively. And further, you will have this testcase.php, pest.php, and one for PHP unit configuration. Now, if you scroll down, here is the example of writing the first test case, which is for unit test. So for creating the test case, either we can use test function or we can use it function. Now if you scroll down, here we have another way, which is alternative to the test function. So Pest provides the convenient it function. Inside that, we can give the meaningful test name followed by callback function and all the functionalities for testing. Now we will see the differences between these two. So let's navigate to the code editor. And here, instead of test function, I will change this to it function. And I will remove this example, and I will give a meaningful name for writing the test case for accessing registration page. So I will give a name as allow user to access registration page. And here in the next line, this is checking $this get function, in which this is checking the route. So this is basically HTTP request method, which is get, post, put, patch, and delete. If you want to know about this, let's check out to the browser. And here I will navigate to the official documentation of Laravel, and I will select the versioning as 12 of this latest version. And here in the left side, we have this testing menu. If you navigate inside this, we have this HTTP tests. Let's click on this. And here we have this documentation for HTTP request method for writing the test cases. If you scroll down, here we have this request methods available as get, post, put, patch, or delete. So for all these available methods, we can write test cases. So for accessing this registration page, this is our get request. So we will have to write the test case in the get request itself, because we are accessing the page only. And the route name is /register, which is defined inside this auth.php. In case if you are creating a custom authentication functionalities without any auth scaffolding package, in that case, based on the route, you will have to define the test cases inside this file. So currently we are going with this inbuilt authentication, which is Laravel Breeze package, and that is given route as register. So I will give route name as register. This is for this registration page, right? And here we have this assert a status function, which will check if this response will return status as 200, then this test will be passed. Now let's check the terminal. And if we'll re-execute this test, yes, here we have this test passed, and the test name is it allow user to access registration page. And if we'll check the name, we have used it function instead of test, and that's why this has concatenated test name as it allow user to access registration page. Now if we'll change this to test back, just like this, and if we'll re-execute this command, now we cannot see that it here, only this has returned the test case name, which is allow user to access registration page. So this is the difference between it and test function. In the terms of functionality, there is no any difference. So it is up to you. Either you can use test function or it function. So our very first test case is passed. Okay, this is for accessing the registration page. Now if you'll try to understand this by adding the dump here, so I will put $response here, and if we'll check the terminal, let's rerun this test command. This has returned HTTP request response, in which we have the following objects. So this is entire response that is returned by using that HTTP get method. So if we'll scroll down, we will have this response status as 200 here. Let's scroll down. And yes, here we have this status code as 200 and status text is OK. Now if you'll try manipulating this status, which is expected result basically, if I will change this to 500 or any status code, and I will just comment this dump and die, and I will retest this command. Now this thrown error as this test case is failed because the response is expecting 500 status, but that received 200 because we are able to access that /register route. So it should return 200 only. But in the result, we forcefully defined that it should return 500. So this is not matching that criteria. Now let's navigate to the code editor again. And again, I will change this to 200. But again, we have some confusion, like why this assert status is there. So this is one inbuilt function in order to check the status. So in order to understand about this, let's navigate to this official documentation of Laravel again. And here we have HTTP tests. Okay. Inside this, we have this available assertions. If we'll click on this, we have the following assertions methods for handling everything related to HTTP request. So we have assert accepted, assert stream content, assert not found, and also we have this assert OK method. So this assert OK method is very similar to this assert status. But the difference is assert OK method will always expect for 200, but in this assert status, we can manually set any of the status that we want to receive. So let's check that. So instead of this assert status, I will use assert OK, just like assert OK, and I will remove this 200 from here, and I will just comment this assert a status in which we passed 200. Now if we'll navigate to the terminal again, and if we'll rerun this phpunit test command, again our test case got passed. There is no any changes. So you can choose between assert OK method and assert status, in which if you want to pass the any of the status like apart from 200, then you can go with assert status method. Else simply if you want to check any response that will return 200, you can go with assert OK. So our first test case is completed. This is for accessing registration page. Okay, now let's jump to the next test case. So in this registration form, I want to register one of the user. So for that, we need to create user, right? And once the user is registered, that user will be authenticated internally and will be redirected to the dashboard page. So in the next test case scenario, we have to handle three functionalities. Firstly, we will have to register one user. That means we have to insert into the database. Further, we have to authenticate that user, because after registration, any authentication scaffolding makes that user to logged in. And after login, that user will be redirected to the dashboard page, right? So we have to handle these three functionalities in the next test case. So let's define second test case here. For registering user, authenticating and redirecting to dashboard. Okay. So for that, again, we will start from test or it function. This is up to you. So this is going to be registering and authentication thing. So I will give a name as register a new user and redirect to dashboard. This is not a syntax, okay? This is just a meaningful name. Now next, let's create one anonymous function. And here we will have to insert one of the user into the database. So for registering the user, Laravel Breeze has given post route as register. So we have to trigger this route from the test. So I will use $this post method, and inside this post method, I will trigger that register route, which is this register route, and this is linked with this store function. Okay, we have to trigger to the same route, which is register. Now inside this, we have to pass the data in the form of array, which is required. So for creating the user, we need following data like name, email, password and confirm password, right? And here, while writing this test case, you have to make sure you are passing the correct attribute as per it defined into the database or validation. So if we'll check out the registration controller, which is registered user controller, and we have the field like name, email, password. So in the validation, it is not checking for password confirmation. But while testing this, we have to check that. So let's define one array here, just like this. And we have to pass the property like name, and let's pass some name which you want to register. Next we have email. So I will give name like test@example.com, and I will pass password as 12345678. Further we have password confirmation field. So this password confirmation must hold the same password which is defined here. So let's make it same, 12345678. Okay, this is done. Now after registering this, we will have to capture the response in a variable like $response. Okay, now if we'll put dump and die here, response. So let's execute this. Yes, if we'll scroll to top, in the parameters, we passed these all fields, and if we'll check the response, here we have status code as 302 and status text is found. And this is target URL as /dashboard. That means this expected like user is registered. So this should redirect to the dashboard route. Now if you'll remove this dump from here, and from here, we have to redirect to the dashboard route. So for redirecting to the dashboard or any of the route, Laravel provides assert function. So if we'll check out assert function, here we have this assert redirect function. So this assert redirect will redirect to the given URL. So after successful registration, we have to redirect to that dashboard route. So for dashboard route, we will have the route as /dashboard, which should be added inside this web.php. So let's define this as $response assert redirect, and I will give the name as dashboard. Now before redirecting to the dashboard, the user must be authenticated, because currently we have just registered the user, right? Now after registering the user, we have to make it authenticated. So for making the authenticated, we have one more assertion as authentication assertions. So inside this, we have the assertAuthenticated function available. So we will be using this assertAuthenticated function in order to check if the registered user is logged in. And as per the general flow of authentication, after a successful registration, the user is being authenticated. So we can call this function inside this. So after this registration, I will use $this assert authenticated. Now here, this will create the user. Further, this will make the authenticated, and then this will redirect that user to dashboard route. Now if we'll navigate to the terminal and let's clear this. Now let's rerun this phpunit test command. And yes, now we have two test cases passed, as the first one is allow user to access registration page. Yes, that is accessible. And further, we are able to register a new user and redirect to the dashboard route. So the register functionality is completed. Now same thing, we will have to write it for login functionality. So again in the login flow, we have two functionalities. The first one is for accessing the login page, and another for making the user authenticated based on given credentials if that credential will match into the database. That means if user credential is matched into the database, that user will be redirected to the dashboard page. So for this, we will have to write the functionality. So let's navigate to the terminal and let's create one more test file for login. And this time, I will create it directly using phpunit make test, and this will be inside auth / and I will give a name as user login test. And by default, whenever you will create a test, that will be considered as a feature test. But if you want to create a unit test, you will have to specify the flag as --unit, so that this will create a unit test for you. As of now, we have to create a feature test, so I won't provide any flag inside this. It will create feature test by default. Let's hit enter, and yes, another feature test has been created, which is user login test. So inside the auth, let's create another test for login functionality. So this is for login page accessibility, and here we have to check the login flow. Login page is accessible, or we can give like allow user to access login page. This is done. And here for the login page, we have to check the login route. So in the auth.php, next we have the get request for accessing the login page, which is login route. So let's copy this route name, and here let's specify this /login. Now if you don't want to use this response, you can change this method directly in the first line itself, just like this. And let's remove this. This will be more simpler. Now if you'll navigate to the terminal and if we'll run this test, yes, we have 3 tests passed. This is for login, which is allow user to access login page. So this is done. Now we have to perform login functionality from here, right? So for that, let's write the test case for making user to authenticated. So this will login functionality with authentication and redirection. Now for this, again I will use test function, and I will give a name like allows a logged in user to see dashboard. Okay, let's create one anonymous function again. And here, firstly, we have to check if user is authenticated. That means if it is logged in. And for checking it from database, firstly, we will have to insert the user. That means that user should exist into the database. So for performing this action, I will be using user model, and using factory, I will create one of the user just like this. Here either you can create user using array or you can use factory or seeder. So for testing purpose, this is the best way to use factory here. And let's import user model. So we'll write use app models user. Now after inserting this user, this will return that user instance. If we'll check and if we'll rerun this command, yes, this has returned the model instance. Now we have to check if this particular user is logged in. So we have to check it using authentication. And for this, Laravel Pest provides one function to check if user is authenticated. So if we'll navigate to the official documentation of Pest, and here in the left side, we will have the plugins. Here, inside these plugins, this provides plugins for Faker, Laravel and Livewire. So as of now, we have to check for Laravel plugins. So if we'll click on this, then here we have the available plugins for user tests, emails, datasets, and here this is assertAuthenticated, and further we have this actingAs. So if we'll read out this documentation, so the actingAs function will check for the authentication. Here we have this example given as this is to illustrate this convenience feature. We can write a test acting as an authenticated user which is accessing the restricted or private pages, which is dashboard. So we can use this for checking this user is authenticated or not. So let's define this functionality here. So I will use $this acting as, and I will pass that user object, which is user instance. And further, I will redirect this to dashboard using get route, which will be redirected to this dashboard. And if it is redirected, then we can check the status. So I will check assert status. So better we can change this method here. So what it will do, firstly, it will create one of the user inside the users table using factory. Further, this will make that user as authenticated. So this acting as will work as this user is authenticated, and if this user is authenticated, this will redirect to this dashboard route. And further, if all these functionalities are done, the response will be 200. So here we can use assert status or assert OK as per the need. Both will work same. Now if we'll navigate to the terminal and let's clear it and let's rerun this test command. And yes, now we have total 4 test cases passed. These 2 are for logins. Now in order to verify this, really does this work? Let me navigate to the code editor, and as of now, I will just remove this acting as function which is making this user to authenticated. So what I'll do, I'll just comment this, and here this will work like $this get dashboard, which is basically checking this dashboard route. But here this is not checking if user is authenticated or not. Now if you'll run this test again, this test case got failed because here the response is expected as 200, but this received 302, which specify this user redirection is navigated to a different route. That means this is not able to redirect it to the dashboard page. That's why this has returned 302. Okay, so here this is the power of acting as method, which is checking if this user is authenticated, then that will work as authenticated user, And if that user is authenticated, then only that user will be able to access this dashboard route. So in order to check this, you'll have to use this actingAs method. Now if you'll enable this again, now if you'll recheck this, yes, this again got passed. So we are done with this login and register functionality. Now here, if you'll notice, in the login test, we have used actingAs function, which is basically simulating as user is logged in. Now in the other hand, in the registration test, we have used assertAuthenticated function, which is checking if user is logged in. Okay, if user is logged in means after authentication, if that user found logged in, then this will redirect to this dashboard. So this is the key difference between assertAuthenticated and actingAs function. Now we will jump to the next step. So in Laravel Breeze authentication, we have few more functionalities like profile access and logout. Okay, firstly, let's work on the logout functionality. So for logout, we can write that functionality inside this login test itself. No need to create another test file. So let's define user logout functionality. I will define test logout the user. Let's create one more anonymous function. And here again we have to use authentication thing. So this is similar to this one. So let's copy these two lines. Firstly, we'll have to create one of the user, and then that user will work as authenticated user. And further, we have to redirect to the logout route, which will be defined inside auth. So here we have this post route. Let's use this post route. This will be post method, and this will redirect to this logout. So let's use / everywhere, because this will expect for full path. This is not using route name. This will be using endpoint basically. So everywhere we can use / and after logout, I want user to be redirected to the login page. So I will be chaining one more method as assert redirect, which we already used here in this registration. So let's copy this, and here also we can use /. Now let's use assert redirect to /login. So what it will do, firstly it will create one user, then this will make that user to authenticated, and this will check if that user is logged in. Then this will allow that user to perform logout functionality, and further after successful logout, this will check if that user is able to redirect to the login page. This is done, and further we have to make that user to guest user. That means that user won't be longer authenticated. So for that, Laravel provides one more method as assert guest. If we'll check out to the documentation again, here in this authenticated assertions, we have this assert guest. This will check if that user is not longer authenticated. So we will be using this $this assert guest. This is done. Now let's navigate to the terminal and let's rerun this test command. So here this said failed asserting that two strings are equal, because as per the authentication flow, Laravel Breeze redirects the user to the home page instead of login route. And here we set this to login route. That's why this thrown error as this is not matching that. And that test case got failed. Now if we'll check the real flow here in the application, I will log into the application first because we already registered one of the user. And here, after clicking on the logout, this is redirected to the home page, which is /route, not to the login page. So we have to update this test here. Yeah, now this will redirect to this home route. And if we'll check this test case again, yes, now all the test cases have been passed. Now same thing, you can write it for accessing the profile page. So in the profile page, again if I'll log into this account. Here we have this profile option. If we click on this profile, for this, again you will have to write two test cases. One is for accessing this profile page and another for updating this profile. Same thing for update password, but for update password, you'll have to write only one test case, which will be for updating the password only, because this component is rendered in the same page which is /profile. Further, we have this delete account. So again, you can write the test case for deleting the account. So this is homework for you. You can write test cases for accessing the profile route, in which there will be three scenarios. Firstly, for updating the profile, updating the password, and deleting the account. And that's it for the today's video. We wrote the tests for authentication functionalities, in which we covered login, register, dashboard, and logout in Laravel 12 using Pest. We even added a small TDD example, which is test-driven development, just in order to see how test guides our development. In the upcoming episodes, we will move into database testings, working with factories, seeders, and CRUD operations. If you found this helpful, please like this video, subscribe to the programming fields, and leave a comment about what you would like me to cover next. And don't forget to write these test cases by yourself. And if you have any doubt or confusion, you can just let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next episode.